it'll be different today than it would have been 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and when I started, in the 80s. I hate to date myself here. I need more makeup, please.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Humphreys, and this is The Pursuit, where I help you in your journey, your hustle, and your climb to become your best self and give the world your best work. After all, I'm still hustling after that too, guys. So I sit down with today's leading celebrities, entrepreneurs, and executives, and then I break down success for the rest of us. This is a Pursuit Profile episode. While you may not know his name, you need to know John Dickey's story. And chances are you know the name of the company he and his brother started in the 90s, Cumulus Media. The brothers went in on a radio station in Atlanta and continued buying stations until their business, with an estimated net worth of around $2 billion today, became the nation's second largest radio company. They began their media journey after college, starting a consulting company for media buying strategies for small businesses. Dickey has seen the media industry turn upside down and continues to stay on the cutting edge, now in digital video, as the new CEO of OraTV, which is a digital broadcast network co-founded by billionaire Carlos Slim and broadcasting industry legend Larry King. I sat down with John Dickey and Larry King to learn how to navigate the ups and downs of a changing media landscape and end up on top. Thanks so much for joining us
You're
today.
welcome. You're welcome.
Exciting to talk about the new stage of just digital television, digital entertainment, but I want to go back and talk about you a little bit first, as I always do. I think it's...
Don't make me blush.
Well, I think you've had a long, fascinating career in business and media. Before you and your brother went to Cumulus, which we'll get to in a second, you had a research company, Stratford Research.
We did.
Which was, what, 10 years, 15 years you guys did that?
About 13, going on 14 years we had that.
So let's talk about the success of that business. You know, most people who go into business fail in the first few years. Yeah. And you were doing business with family, which is a whole nother level of...
It's a whole other strike against us, right?
Yeah. So how did you guys pull that off?
Well, we always had similar interests growing up. We were about 4.5 years apart, give or take. And those interests were athletic. Those interests were sort of just hobbies that we had in common. And what really kind of pulled us together was our love of golf. We both were avid golfers, and we ended up going to college on golf scholarships. We played at the same college, and we overlapped 1 year together in college, which was really nice. And so being close that way and sort of following in his footsteps, but sort of on a similar path based on, just interest in things we had together, it was almost sort of predetermined that we were going to be in business together, even though it didn't feel that way when he got out of school and I was getting out of school. We had different sort of ideas on what we were going to do to start our professional careers. But all of that being said, we ended up getting in business together. And as two young guys that didn't really know exactly what we wanted to do other than we wanted to work together, we did what most people do, which is we decided we were going to go knock on doors and try to help people improve their businesses. And my background in school academically was, my love was history, and it still is today, but I also was smart enough to know that I had to figure out a way to pay the bills, and being a history teacher probably would have been very rewarding, but at the time might not have put a lot of food on the table. Right. So I was also very good at math and statistics and had an interest in that, and so when we got out of school, we decided to form a consulting business to, again, help small businesses of all different sorts and all different purposes try to improve their position competitively in a market. And one of the products that I came up with at the time was or one of the opportunities that I saw at the time was also a problem for small business owners, which is access to custom market research. Small businesses couldn't afford that. If a small business could afford to spend $20,000 or $30,000 a year in marketing, that was a big deal for them. And back then it was typically direct mail. Newspaper was probably prohibitive, and your viewers will laugh, but yellow pages and white pages were still pretty prevalent back then. Right. I don't think you can find them in the bottom of driveways anymore, and search has all gone online. But those were the investments that small businesses made, and they didn't really have a good a good basis for making those decisions other than this is what we think we need to do. So I wanted to try to create a product that solved for that. I wanted to give them access in their marketplace to custom market research so they could get a better sense of what their customers thought about them, and they could get a better sense of how to spend their marketing dollars. The old saying, and it still applies today, half of your marketing dollars are wasted, you just don't know which half. That's what I used to get my foot in the door and start the conversation. And when you sat down with a business owner who generally was, working at the business, living at the business typically, putting their whole life into that business, and you said to them, would you like to know which half of your marketing dollars are wasted? And that guy or person you compete against across the street, would you like to know what your customers think of them? They found a way to give you 10 minutes in their day to have a conversation. And so I created a product. The conversation was an easy one to get into with business owners and proprietors of businesses, and it started to take off. And inevitably, long story short, that conversation ended up focusing in on media and media spend. And the more we got into those conversations, the more I realized that people just in business, and today it's true too, just really didn't know how to invest their marketing dollars to reach their customer. And so getting into conversations specifically related to newspaper, broadcast television, broadcast radio, and direct mail was where we were starting to focus. That led to us focusing our business more on media, and we started to advise media because that was the natural other piece of the conversation, to go back to them and have a conversation. And we started to get into market research and specifically programming-based research for radio and television stations. That took off. We were very good at what we did, I think, and like anything else, we got lucky, and we were probably pretty good. And the next step from there was we wanted to actually cross that frontier and be on the other side of the table and own a radio or TV station. And so we decided to buy a radio station, and we did, and that led to the start of Cumulus Media. And today Cumulus is the second largest owner and operator of radio stations in the country and has the largest radio network in the country, which is Westwood One. Yeah. And that was about almost a 20-year labor of love to build that business. Wow. And my brother today is the vice chairman on the board of that company still. So it was a fun ride and in building that company, and here we are today.
All right, well, that is an incredible journey, but let's pause and first maybe give some advice to the small business owners out there. What do you think they're probably at this minute doing wrong with their marketing?
Well, I don't know if it's what they were doing wrong, but in hindsight and having the benefit of experience and age, I would say that there is always a rush to not be left behind in anything in life. And so you can call it, following the trend, trying to do the popular thing, or, buying what's being pitched to you. Yeah. And I think that's the mistake they typically get into. Les Moonves, who runs CBS, who I'm a big admirer of, very smart man and a great creative type that also has balanced being a great creative type and also an amazing business, leader, which is not easy to do in this business. He said that, as he looks at his business and what's going on with the migration of viewership to digital platforms and, everybody wondering what's going to become of broadcast television, which he's heavily invested in, what's going to become of networks and all of the fragmentation that's happening with video going digitally and being consumed digitally, and really, all of that encapsulated under the heading of, we're a mobile culture now, and how to address that. Les offered some pretty sage advice. He said, it's not one at the expense of the other. It's really figuring out how all of these play together to solve a problem. And I think that's really the issue with small businesses, to answer your question. It's figuring out how they can pause for a minute and not say, hey, the new thing is, search engine optimization, or the new thing is we have to have an app, or the new thing is A, B, C, or D. We are in business and we've gotten past that first hump. Presumably we're still in business, which is we've defied the odds if we're still around after 2 or 3 years. So we must know a little bit of something about what we're selling, our service or product, and we must know a little bit of something about our market and our customer. So let's trust our own instincts a little bit and not necessarily cede all of that control to somebody who comes in and tells us they're a marketing expert. Right. I think that's the first piece of advice. You're there for a reason. Your business you're paying your bills, and your door is still open, and the lights are still on. You're doing something right. Trust that. And 2, don't feel like you have to chase every new fad to reach a customer, right? Things don't change as fast as you think, but things change faster than you hope. And you've got to be able to kind of figure out what that happy equilibrium is between those two sort of paradoxical statements and balance it out. And there's nothing wrong, using a military metaphor, there's nothing wrong with standing still if you don't know. Where you blow a leg off in a minefield is if you keep walking around and you don't know what you're doing.
Great.
If you just stand still for a minute, if you don't know, that's cool too. And just take a pause, keep your money in your pocket, and think through it. Ask lots of questions. And then you'll probably be better off if you do that.
And so before we move into Cumulus, maybe just what's your best piece of advice for people out there working with family members? How do you guys stay sane?
I would say that all of the cautionary tales and advice about working with family members certainly apply in our case. It just happened to work out, and I think I credit that to my parents and how they raised us and taught us to be close and to trust one another and get through the fights and hug and forget about it and move on. So that if you have that in a business partner, that is a luxury, and that's an advantage that is amazing. I would say it's hard for me to say how what worked for us is going to work for other people. I would say the idea of being able to work with family is wonderful, and if you can, do it, but it's not for everybody. So it really is an individual answer to that question. You've got to know your sibling, and if you feel like it's not going to jeopardize that relationship, then jump in and do it because it's wonderful. But I think most of all, protect the relationship, right? Business is just business, and families forever. So I would say look at it the other way. Don't force it if it's going to be at the expense of your relationship with your sibling or even your spouse. It's a difficult thing.
Good point.
Yeah.
So then you guys get a radio station and become the second largest radio network. How did you scale?
Yeah, we bought 2 stations in Atlanta. We moved our consulting business down to Atlanta in 1992, 1993 to run those 2 stations. We basically just applied what we were doing for other people to stations that we put our own money and placed our own bet on, and lo and behold, it worked. And the stations became very, very successful. We sold the FM radio station to Cox, which today is still the highest price ever paid for a single FM radio station, which was a pretty cool thing. Kept the AM, which we still own, and then from there we just kept on our plan and our tear to buy more radio. We bought some stations in Nashville and put together a nice business there. And then the Telecommunication Act you'll probably fact check this and know, but I think 1934, 1936 changed. And at that point, you basically, it in essence de-risked capital investment into radio. You could own more radio stations in a given market. And so at that point, we said this is a great opportunity. Lowry Mays at Clear Channel was doubling down and building his business in large markets, taking advantage of that change in regulation. And we decided to flank and go the other way in smaller and middle markets, and that's what we did. And so Clear Channel was off to the races building their business in large markets, and we went the other way and built our business in small markets. And today, through acquisitions and all the other stuff, Clear Channel, which is now iHeartMedia, and Cumulus are the 2 largest radio platforms in the country.
Wow.
It was a pretty interesting run.
What's your advice for someone out there who's trying to grow or in the process of growing? I mean, that is some crazy growth, and obviously it wasn't overnight, but I mean, more and more people, more and more staff, more and more management. What's your advice? Well,
I would say scale for the sake of scale never ends well. And I would say be mindful of that, number one. That being said, we're in uncharted waters in media right now, and scale really is important. And without scale, you're just not going to be able to compete. You look at the sheer magnitude of the scale of Facebook and their platform and Google and their platform, and there's no even a close third. Everything pales in comparison. So you need scale in this business now today to survive, but you need to think about scale differently, I guess, than when we were building our business. Because a lot of the things that are present today competitively and from a technology standpoint weren't present when we were building our business. The internet wasn't what it is today. Right. The absolute rapid migration of audiences into digital, chasing video that way, and audio slowly following, but more importantly that way, never existed, and it does today. So that's created a massive disruption. Streaming and how music was bought and consumed has changed dramatically since we got into the business. Search, it completely decimated a multi-billion-dollar business around yellow and white pages. Right. So there's so many things that have changed since we got in and started to grow, and with the idea of consolidation being inevitable in radio and scaling, that I would just say, Scale today is extremely important, but what it means and how you achieve scale and what that looks like is going to be, my guess, far different today than just going deeper into your business, meaning own as many radio stations as you can or own as many broadcast television stations as you can. That alone isn't going to ensure survival and dominance in your field anymore.
Okay, so thinking of my audience, someone who has one podcast that's doing
Yep.
well,
Yep.
or maybe one YouTube channel or one, media outlet that they own
Yep.
that's doing well. What do you think they should do next? Move into a different market, or how do you think they
Well,
should
I think they ought to.
survive?
I think those are great questions, and they're kind of related but slightly different. If you're trying to build your brand with, or let me back up and say, if you have a YouTube channel and you're trying to build a business, you first have to ask yourself, what is my business model? Is it to try to use this platform, YouTube, and the opportunities that they afford to build my brand?
Right.
And if my end game is to build my brand and my following and then to monetize that advantageously and really agnostically across multiple platforms, right? And we have plenty of examples of that in scripted, unscripted television, or just brands, period, that have come out of there, right?
Right.
YouTube stars, the Kardashians have
Yep.
done it brilliantly. Then that, if that's the goal, then stay focused on that goal and look at these opportunities or these distribution outlets as nothing more than stepping stones to achieving that goal. They're not ends in among themselves, or they're a means to an end.
Right.
Build your brand, realize that you want to be multi-platform, which is what you have to be today if you're really going to be successful and monetize your brand, and try to get around as many people as you can that have experience in building multi-platform brands, or even people that have experience, singularly in one type of platform, and pick their brain nonstop till they're tired of talking to you,
Yeah.
and stay focused on building your brand, right? And your brand is going to be built by doing something that ultimately leads to engagement. It's going to have to be unique. It's going to have to be differentiated. It's going to have to be compelling, and it's going to have to be believable. Even if it's a persona, it has to be believable. And so that would be my advice in that regard. It's
What
out
if
there.
the other side, not brand building, but
Yep.
they want to have a podcast, media company. What do you think? How would you tell
I
them to go?
I think from an audio podcast side, I think that's a very challenged space. I've spent a lot of time, and I think I've got a decent amount of credibility in that area. And I personally, for what it's worth, don't think that is a business that I would want to be in. I just don't see a huge future. I think it's a one-to-one business in a one-to-many, environment. So podcasts are a very individual business, and there's no barriers to entry, and anybody that has something they think to say that they think one person wants to hear is in the podcast space. And so trying to aggregate that, create, in essence, a consolidation of those and a business out of it, like some folks are trying to do. I just think that's going to be a very, very difficult thing to do, because you have endless amount of inventory, which leads to a price curve that goes the wrong way.
Right.
And it's just very hard to build a business out of that. I really believe that.
So someone who, is in the media business, you've been in it for years now. What's your number one piece of advice for success in building a, media, entertainment, communications company?
Well, it'll be different today than it would have been 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and when I started, in the 80s. I hate to date myself here. I need more makeup, please. And I would say today, the advice I would give is you have to be willing to think about the media landscape in a way that's never been thought of before. And again, back to sort of this whole notion of traditional broadcast media, radio and television, and print sort of now secondarily, and digital media is no longer sort of the progression. It's not I'm going from broadcast or legacy media to new media, which is digital. It's now kicked up to another level today as we're speaking, which my brother Lou has spent a lot of time studying. He's got a book coming out called The New Modern Media, but it's really the new modern media. It's the confluence, it's the merging of traditional media, new media, and technology that come together to create this sort of, in a very interesting but puzzling way, this toxic cocktail of forces that everybody in every boardroom today at any size media company is trying to figure out. Able to look at it, but my advice would be, don't look at things the way you've been taught or you think you should look at it. You've got to, break down all those walls, and the giant media companies of today, really tomorrow forward, are going to look so much different than anything you've ever thought of, which again might be scary, but it presents a unique opportunity.
Right.
And then work backwards from that to say what kind of skills are going to be important to those companies, and the skills that are going to be important are going to, and this never goes out of fashion, and that's creativity, right? Hard work, right? Understanding an audience, and being able to go out and bring a technology perspective into your craft, and not be afraid of it. Embrace it.
Yeah.
And I think all of that tied into a bow of the realization that this is now forever a mobile culture.
Yeah.
It's not do you have a mobile strategy? It's we're in a mobile culture.
Right.
That is the strategy,
Yeah,
right?
Period.
And end of sentence. That is the strategy. So, they're talking today about millennials being a digital first generation. That's all they care about. They're going digitally first, and that's true. And that's 70-some million people growing up digitally first, which is never anything anybody has ever seen before, and the ramifications that's going to have. And you couple that with, mobile, and that's the reality of it for everybody, regardless of generation. And you're going to have companies that are going to have to figure out how to respond to that and build and take advantage of that reality. That's what the new modern media landscape is going to be about. And that's understanding that and getting that right, and getting first to market with that, with a perspective that is right, is going to be invaluable.
Which is obviously one of your goals at Aura.
Yep.
So why don't you tell us how you got connected with Larry King for Aura, and sort of your vision and what you guys are doing, because it's very exciting.
Well, again, back to Larry. I've known Larry for a while, predating Aura, from radio. And we have connected on some things in radio with Cumulus in the past, and you can't be in radio, or I should say you can't be in media and not be a fan of Larry and be in awe of Larry. So the opportunity to get back in touch with Larry and to provide some perspective and maybe some help on Aura was fun for me, and the timing was good for me to do it. And obviously the story on how Aura was formed is, could be a book in and of itself, with two, titans and legendary people coming together to do something pretty cool. And look, the byline on all that is, America Movil, which is a huge wireless network serving Mexico and Latin America with 270-some million subscribers, which if you put that into context with AT&T and Verizon, it's 2 times the size from a subscriber standpoint, a customer base.
Wow.
Huge company. The fact that they're getting deeper into investments in content is also interesting, because back to the new modern media, wireless networks, you see what Verizon's doing with AOL and Yahoo and AT&T with DirecTV. That's just the tip of the iceberg on what we're going to see. And so back to your question, knowing what Aura's parenting was all about and how that came together, and knowing Larry, and being very interested in video and digital video production, I was thrilled when Larry asked me to come in and give him some advice on his company. And that's how, quite frankly, that's how we got together. So It's exciting.
So what are your goals? What are some new things you guys have coming up for Aura? And maybe some challenges. I mean, anyone who is working in, me here trying to build, something digitally, we all want to, know what you guys are seeing as the future. What's the future of our industry?
Yeah. So the future of the industry is going to be in producing, I think, very high quality video content affordably and sensibly with the partner you're producing the content for.
Okay.
And so I think that's the future. I think there's going to be increasingly a fork in the road in that space, where you're going to have, and on our scene, from a video production standpoint, a lot of, I don't know what the right word is, but a lot of just fairly low quality, I wouldn't say junk, but if somebody said junk, I wouldn't disagree with them, video that is out there for consumption, most of it user generated, some of it not. And you're seeing increasingly, from an advertiser standpoint, a huge demand for branded premium video content that they can attach their story and their message to. And companies that can come in and fill that demand and produce that content and work with a platform, you know, a tier 1 publisher, if you will, to get into that space and help them do it in a way that they have a good experience doing it, because that's not their background, right? They're publishers. They're producing editorial content on a platform and attracting tens of millions of viewers, but they're not in the video business.
Right.
And so figuring out how to get them into the video and bridge and get them into the video business so they can, you know, participate in what we all know to be, you know, a more lucrative part of the advertising pie, much higher CPMs, more desirable, et cetera, is what Ora, I think, is uniquely positioned to do. That doesn't mean that we're forgetting our roots and our foundation as an on-demand, you know, digital entertainment network. We've got over, I don't know, 30 original shows, close to it, that Ora has produced and owns and is syndicating out, and we're going to continue to do that. And our charter as a company and our ability to go out and find projects that we believe in, work with, you know, very well-known talent who trust us because they know that we have, you know, their best interest at heart, that we're going to put content out that is going to be authentic and you know, creatively sensible for them and well done, is what is driving a lot of that high, you know, premium talent to us, which is we're very flattered and appreciative of, and we're seeing more of that. And so we will continue to be opportunistic that way, and we have a lot of stuff in the pipeline there. But increasingly, the opportunity to go out with these large publishing platforms, these large websites that have tens of millions of views a month, that are rushing to get into the video space and do not know how to do it, and to be that trusted partner with them and produce amazing video content that is true to their brand, that's properly contextualized, you know, against their traffic, their endemic traffic on their platform, I think is a huge opportunity, and we're already seeing a lot of success in that. And I think the nexus from there is, and you've seen this with Vice, the bridge between producing video content for those platforms and linear television is a short bridge. And you're seeing a lot of these platforms are looking at what Vice is doing and accomplishing, and they're saying, we have great brands, we have great traffic, we want to get into that space, and we want to get into our own, take our own brand to linear television. And so I think Ora will be a trusted partner and pilot or co-pilot, depending on how you view it, with those brands and those platforms, and helping them to develop those ideas and to develop that creative and to actually produce that creative. So that's sort of the short answer to the vision of Ora. Obviously, all of it centered and anchored around the force of nature, which is Larry King. And Larry is doing some of his best work that I've ever seen, and continues to amaze all of us, I think, in media, and certainly at Ora, with his passion, his creativity, his curiosity, and the quality of his work. And so 600 plus interviews and counting going into our 5th season on Larry King Now. Content that's distributed globally.
Right.
He's not slowing down, and he's amazing. And so it's all, I think the future is very bright for Ora.
But, I mean, my viewers would kill me if I didn't ask. I mean, obviously, you guys have to have a plan in place. I know they're going to freeze him. He's very into freezing, so he'll be back. But, if the whole brand is built around Larry, what happens?
Well, the whole brand is built around Larry, but it's more than that. It's Larry King and what Larry King means. What Larry King means to people on the other side of that round table. And what Larry King means to people on the other side of that round table is they're going to sit down with somebody who is not going to play gotcha. They're going to sit down with somebody who's not trying to make a name for themselves off of gotcha.
Right.
But they're going to sit down with somebody that's going to be not only respectful, but very well briefed and trained in their craft, and cause the other person, as a result of that, to be very relaxed and open, and to show a side of themselves that their viewers and their fans are longing to see.
Yeah.
That's what the Larry King brand stands for. So there will always be demand for that. There will always be a place and relevance for that. And long after Larry decides that he wants to try to get that golf game down a little bit, which won't happen anytime soon, I can promise you, that the Larry King brand and that style of journalism and interviewing and that quality that comes out of that will will be alive and well. And so there will be no end to that.
Yeah.
There will be no end to that. Any more than in radio, when Paul Harvey passed along, Paul Harvey's news and commentary continued with different hosts under a different brand, but the same thing. It was bringing very insightful, folksy, middle America stories to people with happy endings and inspiring messages with happy endings.
Yeah.
And so there's never not going to be a need for that, right?
Yeah.
And the same with what Larry, and that's, I think, one of the key drivers of Larry's success. He's brought to journalism and to broadcasting a style that is never going to go out of style, will always be in demand.
That's a great lesson on legacy, everything you just said about his legacy, and that makes total sense.
Yep.
Final 2 questions, and then we'll get Larry in to join us. It's interesting, you mentioned authenticity a few times, and I think you might be talking about for someone watching who's trying to grow and they want to go into branded content because they can make money that way.
Yep.
What's your advice in doing that in an authentic way?
Well, it takes a real talent to do that. And so, look at Stephen Colbert. I mean, that persona is a persona. That's not who he is.
Right.
Nancy Grace, that's not who she is, right? And they have very long runs playing that character, but they do it in a very authentic way and in a very true way. It may seem strange to think you can do that, but talented, successful people or talented people can do that, and it becomes very successful. So I would say that if that is, whether you yearn to be a YouTube star, you yearn to build a brand using YouTube and other distribution platforms to go multi-platform, or whatever is getting you out of bed, excited to do what you do and drive that passion. If you're going to create a character, and that character you feel has some connection to your soul, your being, and you believe in it, then you'll sell it through to an audience, and they'll believe in it.
What about, now there's sort of a question around hosts hosts of a podcast doing a script that's actually an ad that doesn't feel like an ad, the listeners being tricked or whatever. I mean, how can people be authentic when it's a branded content story or I think
it's tough. I think it's very, very tough. I've been in the middle of all those conversations with big advertisers that are dangling big budgets, and they want talent to sell that. And they want it to be, call it what you want, native advertising. Their whole idea is to try to trick, right? Their whole idea is to make it seem seamless and make it seem like it's a continuation of content. So I think that is difficult. I hearken back to what Guy Ritchie did with his short films for BMW years ago. That was brilliant. There was nothing wrong with that. That was creative. That was cool. That to me was the embodiment and essence of native, content and native advertising. But I think there's a very real line in the sand that I think people have to be careful of, and talent needs to be mindful of. The problem is the pressures on a lot of these media companies to take dollars in are huge and real. And so, and I can speak about that from experience in radio, the push to try to get talent to do more live reads and more endorsement-based advertising, huge. And that at some point you cross that line, and it starts to devalue your authenticity, your connection, your engagement with your audience.
Right.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
I don't know the solve for that, other than we just need more responsible people thinking about other ways to solve the top line problem than to ultimately destroy what gets you to the party to begin with, which is that relationship.
Yeah, with the viewer.
That's exactly right.
Okay, last question. You have had a successful career, still going, decades in media. Looking back, what's been the best part and the worst part?
Well, the best part probably has been watching how everything has changed so slowly but so quickly, and being part of it and being in the middle of it. Not having to have a sideline or a side chair seat while it's all been going on. Yeah. That's been one of the best parts, and I would say as a subtitle to that, or a subplot to that, meeting some of the coolest, most interesting, strangest people I've ever imagined being around, and I mean that in a good way. So that part's been great. The hard part is, like anything else, the travel. It's tough. Yeah. When you build a business that scales, especially in media, you're all over the place, and that does take you away from family and friends, and that's been the sacrifice. That's been the tough part. But those are small prices to pay for being involved in a business and a profession you love, and and being able to meet and be part of helping to, hopefully mentor some careers successfully and see other people sort of take those lessons and pass them on and sort of pay forward with that. So it's been fun. I've felt very privileged to be, in my career, to be taking part of media where in this period of time, given what's been going on.
Right. It's an incredible time to be in the industry.
Right. We never thought in a span of 20, 25 years you'd see almost the death of newspaper.
So much change.
So much change, and so much change to come. And it's been really, and before that, 30 years prior, very consistent, steady Freddy.
Yeah.
It really was.
Wild.
3 martini lunches and phone it in, and business woke up on January 1st from the prior year, and you could book it was going to grow another 3 or 4 or 5%.
Yeah.
It's a whole different day today, but it's exciting, and I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. It's been very fun to be part of it.
Here are my keys to success for the rest of us in the media industry from John Dickey. First, find and fill a need. I think it's interesting that the Dickey brothers majored in English and history, you guys, not business or entrepreneurship, but they found a need. They had a knack for business and statistics and realized that small businesses didn't have access to market data and didn't understand media buying, so they started consulting. 2, they looked at both sides of the table. What's interesting is their massive success happened in part because back in the beginning as consultants, they realized that they were serving media buyers, the companies buying the advertising, but they could also advise the people selling the advertising. And they started to advise media properties, broadcasting stations, television stations on what kind of programming did the best. This eventually led to them buying their first radio station because they decided they wanted to get in the game. He says they got lucky, realizing that they did have great timing in the industry, but also he says there was some skill involved and that they were pretty good at it. Number 3, he says, don't give in to marketing FOMO, the fear of missing out. I asked him about marketing mistakes that businesses make, and he says this is the one he's seen over and over again throughout the years. Don't just buy advertising where people say you should or on the latest trend. Instead, you need to trust your instincts, do your research, ask a lot of questions, and make a strategy. Number 4, start small and replicate what works. When they bought their first radio station, they decided to just apply what they had been teaching their clients for 15 years. And when that worked, they bought another station, and then another. And then when the Communications Act of 1934 changed in the 90s, they were allowed to buy multiple stations at once. And while Clear Channel, their competitor, was going after large markets, they decided to buy up all the stations in small and middle markets. And that paid off for them. Next, know your media business model. The media strategy for someone who is a YouTube personality is going to be way different than someone who's trying to build a media company. You need to know the difference, and you need to make the right strategy for your business model. Number 6, look at the whole picture. Every day a new platform pops up, but that doesn't mean it's Snapchat versus YouTube versus broadcast television versus mobile. It means you have to ask, how can they all work together? He says the media landscape is changing so rapidly that whatever the giant media companies or successful media companies of the future look like, we probably haven't even seen it yet. One key point he mentioned is that if you have a mobile strategy, you're behind because we live in a mobile culture, and mobile should be a given when it comes to your marketing. Lastly, always focus on quality. He says the low cost of entry is going to make it difficult because just producing large quantities of subpar content is not going to cut it in the long run. But on the other hand, the days of spending millions and millions to create one commercial are over too. That's why he's excited about the possibilities for OraTV, because they have the quality of the Larry King brand, but they're a mobile first, digital first strategy. So think about quality instead of quantity and just focus on what works, he says, even though this can be overwhelming. Focus on creativity, hard work, understanding your audience, being able to go out and bring in a technology to your craft, and don't be afraid of change, embrace it. So I'm excited to be sitting with both of you now. Larry, everyone wants to know, why not just retire? How come digital television? What's the deal?
I thought I could retire. I really did. And the night Osama bin Laden was killed, I was watching television, and I wanted to jump up and go somewhere and do a broadcast and talk to people, and there was nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And Carlos Slim had asked me a short while before that, are you prepared to do nothing? Why don't we do something? So my wife came up with the idea of, why not Larry King now? We got together. and I realized I couldn't retire. Milton Berle used to say, when asked was he going to retire, he would say, "Retired to what?" I don't know what. If I had retired, I would not probably be here. I think work keeps you going. And this digital world is a whole new world to me. But I'm still doing what I always do. I'm just interviewing younger people, different kinds of people that we had on CNN. Plus, we do a lot of politics. We do a lot of sports. We do everything. And I'm still enjoying it. And so the thought of I thought I could that was insane. I could not retire.
Now tell
Did
me
you
how.
retire?
I tried for, as you were talking, I was thinking about it. I tried for 90 days, and it was miserable. It was
90
miserable.
days.
Love my kids, so no offense to my family, but 90 days, and I was going crazy. And I agree with Larry. I think you got to have purpose when you wake up, and if you feel like you still can contribute and you love what you do, why retire? And so, as I mentioned to you, Kelsey, Larry's doing some of the best work that I've ever witnessed. Being a fan of Larry's for decades. Some of the best work I've ever seen is coming out of Larry right now. And the fact that he's on a digital platform and accessible, to a different generation through that distribution, has now opened up sort of his audience. Very much, I call it the Tony Bennett effect. He's got an audience now that spans young kids, teenagers, all the way through to people his generation. And it's very unique, very global, and very powerful. And so I think he's just hitting a stride now with this newfound relevance across, this multi-generation audience that he's got following him.
Now, go ahead.
It's amazing to me that so many kids, young kids that know me and and they watch me. And I was in Montreal. It was unbelievable. I did an event in Montreal. And kids all over, everybody there knew. It was like insane. But it's very nice. Hey, it's nice to know that you're communicating well.
Earlier you mentioned that you focused on what you were doing and you didn't have, much knowledge of the control room and everything that was going on. But now, are you in more control? Do you have more say? Do you have more?
Well,
are you having more fun?
I own a piece of the company. We have a great CEO in John. Sean is very involved. We have a great staff. It's not as large as the staff at CNN, but they're very motivated. I can look into the control room. It's a very nice studio. But I consider myself, I never consider myself an owner. I'm an employee. I'm an employee of the company I have a piece of. But I go to work and I listen to others. I take advice. I never wanted to be a boss. I've never fired anyone. I don't want to be a boss.
No, I think you've struck that balance wonderfully. Larry's, this company came about because of Larry and Mr. Slim, and it's more intimate than the environment Larry was in before, which I think is wonderful. But Larry's not running around as he could, and getting behind in the control room and telling people what to do and how to do their job. Larry's wonderful. He hires people he trusts. They do their job, and Larry knows what his role is.
Another thing is, there's no pressure here. I feel no pressure here. CNN, was very was much better when Ted Turner owned it. Ted was a very easy guy. CNN became very corporate. There's thousands of workers. Time Warner, and they were fine. I had a great relationship with them, but there was a lot of pressure. You're doing a live show every night, and they added to the pressure. They would create kind of pressure. Nothing against it. That's the nature of the business. I don't have that at Larry King now.
Do you miss live?
Only when there's a big event.
That makes sense.
I miss live when there's a big event. And, we tape and we do politics. We air it the next day, opinions. But that part I do miss.
And for things like election and so forth, Larry has the
We'll be live.
Larry has the opportunity to be on a big platform live and participate in those those moments, and so I think it's a good balance. I think you for the immediacy and the value of what live brings around an election and other things, Larry can do that, and otherwise he's in a position to be able to bring an amazing cacophony of different guests from different walks of life in, and they're all lining up because they want to be on Larry King Now or on Politicking with Larry. They want to be in front of Larry, and they want to experience what it's like to be interviewed by the greatest communicator, that broadcasting and media has ever known. So it's pretty cool.
I bet there's some pressure though for the people you bring on. I feel like there would be a lot of pressure once you join, not your employees, I mean when you bring on a new show, new talent, because it's Larry King's network. I don't know. I feel like that's a big name. Tell me kind of about how you guys.
Well, I think the pressure is, I think they understand the primacy of the brand. Mm-hmm. They understand what Larry King as a brand means, and everybody has a responsibility to hold themselves to that standard, to that level of professionalism, and that quality. And so, yes, I think you're right, Kelsey. There is a pressure, but we put that on ourselves because we're dealing with we're dealing with an amazing brand, and we don't take that lightly. Being around Larry, 5 minutes around Larry, and he has an amazing way of making people feel like he's just Larry. And he obviously isn't just Larry, but that's the way he conducts himself, and so he puts people at ease very quickly, which is a wonderful gift in and of itself.
It's very weird to be as famous as a lot of your guests. It's very weird. And Walter Cronkite told me once, he's covering a convention years ago, and there was the Illinois delegation was meeting, and he went in to cover with the Illinois delegation, and they all stopped. And they're getting autographs, and that's crazy.
He went there to cover it, right?
He was there to cover it, and they're in awe of him.
You have to tell your Oprah story.
Oprah was on my show, and she was saying, do you know how well known you are? And I said, I don't think about it. She said, well, I was on a safari in Africa, and it was a photographic safari. Mm-hmm. And there was the head captain, whatever they call him. And we were talking, and it was obvious he didn't know me. Oprah said, he obviously didn't know me. So
Safari guy didn't know Oprah.
Who Oprah was.
Yeah.
So I said to him, Oprah said, do you know me? And he said, I don't know you. And she said, do you know Tom Brokaw? He goes, no. You know Johnny Carson? No. And then he said to her, you know Larry King? And she said, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
On a tundra in the middle of sub-Saharan Africa.
Wow.
Do you know Larry King? There you have it. Yep.
That is crazy.
It's good stuff.
But maybe talk a little bit about the programming you guys bring on, how you choose. Do you play part in the talent you guys pick?
I'm asked an opinion, but I don't. I respect, all my life I've respected the people who, I worked for some great people. Ted Turner was great because he let you have your, John Dickey's great because he really understands the broadcaster. And I've been lucky enough to work in my life at local stations that were terrific, that knew how to handle that. And I couldn't program a network. That's not my, I don't see the big picture. I see my picture. I don't know, I could have an opinion this show or what that show might work, but it would be the same opinion as yours or anyone else's. It's maybe semi-educated. I don't know how you.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, they'll ask me, "What do you think of this?" But I don't know.
I think Larry's got, as I said, Larry's appeal is so wide. And when we think about what we're trying to do with Larry King now and the types of guests we want to have, we're covering lifestyle, entertainment, of course, obviously politics to some extent, but more
She's
specifically.
asking about other shows that we.
Oh, you're talking about other shows, not just the guests on
Bringing on
shows.
more new talent.
Oh, bringing on new talent. No, yeah, in that regard, Larry's,
I don't get involved.
if Larry has an opinion, which we love to hear it, he tells us. Sean has an opinion. We love it, and Sean's ideas are great. She's got great instincts. She's been obviously on the other side of the camera for a long time as a host of an entertainment show in movies, and she's got great experience and great feel. And so I really relish the moments we have, which we've had a few so far, where we can just sit and sort of riff creatively about what we want to do. That part's cool. To Larry's point, he's got an amazing group of people that I can't take responsibility for or credit for, that they've assembled at Ora, from some of these folks from CNN, from his days at CNN, and others from other ventures that are crazy creative and have amazing ideas. And the beauty of being in, Larry mentioned about the pressure in larger companies and smaller companies. I know a little bit about that too, having built a company with 7,000 employees, 7,500 employees. the beauty of this size company is everybody can come in and express their creativity. They may have a specific job to do and do it well, but you never know where a great idea is going to come for a show, whether it's scripted, unscripted, or short form or anything else. And so it's a cauldron of just amazingly creative people that are given an opportunity and a process to express that. So we're constantly, driving ideas from that process. And I got to tell you, based on the gravitational pull of Larry and his brand, we're getting pitched a lot of great ideas. So our deal flow is exceptional, and I credit Larry and certainly our partner America Mobile and his relationship with Mr. Slim for that as well. It's been wonderful.
So a couple more questions. Larry, why digital TV? I mean, when you decided you didn't want to
Because
retire.
it's what's happening.
Gotcha.
It is. I've been at the forefront of a lot of things. I was the first national radio talk show host on the Mutual Network. I did a first there. And then I was the first international cable television show. I was reminded something the other day. I also did I did a show for the Voice of America once a month from Washington, interviewing people from all over the world. It was not heard in the United States. I did that too, and it was the first time it was international call-ins was on that show. And then CNN was a first, being seen around the world. And so digital was it's the next thing. It's the internet. I don't know where it is. But
It's on a
it's
server farm in Virginia.
Yeah.
it's the next thing. And so I've always been kind of pioneerish in that regard. I'm proud of that.
Yeah, I definitely think that's part of your success.
I mean, we've had a digital show that's had Emmy now. I've got a Lifetime Achievement Emmy, which was a great honor 5 years ago. But we've had more nominations than I got at CNN. We got on this show.
In 2 years, Larry.
Yeah, competing as a
Right.
digital,
Yep.
the only
Wow.
digital nominee against regular programs.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Wow, very cool. Well, why don't you guys just tell us what's next for Ora?
He would know. I go to
Well, we're in season 5 of Larry King now. More, and probably even more compelling, shows from Larry. The amount of people that are lining up that want to be on Larry it's a first-class problem to have. And so we just have some amazing guests coming up. Larry's going to be on the road after this interview to Nashville with a slate of some great interviews, including Dolly Parton and some others. So we're really excited about season 5 and beyond. With respect to Ora, I think 2 things I would say on Ora. One, we've got some great shows in the pipeline that we're with some very well-known talent that we can't talk about yet that we're working on bringing out into this environment, into the digital environment. And so that I'm excited about, and that's coming along nicely. And 2, we're doing some amazing work with our partners in the publishing world and on websites. These big, giant tier 1 publishers that have 20, 30 million views a month and larger, helping them to bridge into the video world, to take their brand, their traffic, and figure out how to create compelling video content that is done right for them, that increases engagement and obviously profitability for them, and ultimately gives them potentially some optionality in linear television. And so that, in a short period of time, is what we have on the plate at Ora, and we're very excited about that. And check back with us early next year, and I'm sure the list is going to grow.
Yeah.
But the future is bright for Ora, and we've got a lot of wonderful things happening there.
Well, thank you both so
Thank you,
much.
Kelsey. Great
Yeah,
talking to you.
enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.
I'm Kelsey Humphreys, here with John Dickey and Larry King, and this has been The Pursuit.
Pursue.
Don't forget, guys, there are 3 ways to support the show. You can subscribe here on YouTube, you can leave a comment, and you can go subscribe to the weekly emails to go behind the scenes and get extra info from each episode.